Ever since episode 7 of the Amazing Digital Circus released, my mind has been overrun by thoughts of these bright, colored characters. But in particular, Cain. People have been thirsting for anything about the other characters, but I feel as though the Ringmaster himself isn't getting enough attention. What secrets does he hold? Is he hiding something big from us? Do we really know what's going on beneath that tuxedo of his? Gooseworx, please just show us more. Wait, no, not like that.
What do you think of Pomni?
If I'm honest, I've been thinking maybe a little too much about this digital circus. But it's refreshing to be thinking about something I enjoy to such an extent that it's the first time I've come up with my own theories that I believe have some merit to them. Let me just start by saying that I'm a itty-bitty little baby theorist. I've watched your game theories, your new rock stars, and my personal favorite, The Unwithered Truth, but I've yet to really sit down and flesh out my own ideas further than just a thought I had in the shower and then forgot about the second I stepped out. So please, constructive criticism is appreciated, but maybe don't burn me at the stake if I say something that's already been disproven. With all that said, take my hand because we're about to go back to the very beginning. Before we dive deep into this rabbit hole, I just want to say if you enjoy this type of content, consider subscribing. I have so many more theories about this series, and I'm super interested in doing more like this. I hope you enjoy. On October 13th of 2023, the pilot, now confirmed to be episode 1, of the Amazing Digital Circus released. And I don't think it's a stretch to say that there was one highlight, or should I say, an important detail that I believe is crucial to solving how the main cast will escape or attempt to escape their digital hell. To recap, the episode begins with an intro sequence that is interrupted by the introduction of a new character, being our protagonist, Pomni. It's important to note that during the intro sequence, she notices an exit door, which she attempts to run to, but it disappears before there's even a chance to grab the handle. Shortly after, she has a conversation with the rest of the game's captives, consisting of Ragatha, Jax, Zubul, Gangle, Kinger, and Cain, with a 7th character, Kaufmo, not being present. She has a hard time grappling with the idea that she is now trapped inside of a cartoonish body that isn't her own, and worse, a computer game that she has no control over. Some characters, like that bum Ragatha, try to reassure her, while others, like Jax, dismiss any hopes of escape she may have had after seeing that exit door. That's what I want to focus on. Because after Cain shows Pomni around, explains the adventure for the day, and the gang splits up into 2 teams, the Kaufmo Retrieval Squad and the Gloink Grabbers. I know, the names I made are pretty tough, no need to tell me. The Kaufmo Retrieval Squad fails spectacularly, as Kaufmo, that character who was absent from the intro, has abstracted. Something in the circus that happens to characters who fully lose their minds, and kinda just... After some running away from the monster, and a healthy amount of Gloink B-plot, Pomni runs into the exit door once again, but this time it doesn't disappear, and she enters. But before I can properly explain that place in a way that makes sense for this theory, we need to jump ahead to episode 6. I won't recap all the episodes in the interest of time, but we really don't need to for the sake of what I need to explain. All that's important is, right as the Fortnite adventure gets underway, we see Cain on his lonesome, anxiously tapping the beach chair he sits upon before he takes some pictures out from his pocket and just stares at them. The place we see in the image is very similarly designed to the place that Pomni enters upon using the exit door in the pilot. Now, if you'll look closer with me, there's some important takeaways to be had from just this image. What jumps out to me at first is the CNA logo on the walls, which we've seen before in episode 1 on the wall. A very similar design choice to how it's shown in the photo. However, there's more to this image than the obvious. First, take a look at the style of computer used here. To me, these look like very early 2000s style computers. The towers, the monitors, the color, all of it screams that specific era of electronics. We also know that Gooseworx based part of the look of this series on early 2000s video games to further support that. What I find most interesting though is the condition in which the computers are in. Specifically, in Cain's photos of this place, looking closer, they're in very good condition, almost mint. Hold on to that, because we're going to come back to it later. But the general vibe of this image just says operational. There's coffee next to the computers and papers at the edge of the table, implying that there are people working there. They're just maybe off on a bathroom break or something. But that's pretty much it. That's the most we can gather from this just one image. That was until episode 7 released, wherein Cain and Jax shared a very special moment together. During this moment, Jax asked Cain about his hobbies. To which Kane replies,
This Macroverse place really intrigues me, and these photos are all I have of the location. I'm obsessed with them. I just wish I had more info on the location so I could accurately recreate it. Too bad they cut me off, right?
Yeah, what a shame.
there's so many questions that come from just this 20-second clip alone. Why is it called the Macroverse? Where did Kane even get these photos from? Who cut him off? Who's they? And I get it. See, now you know how I feel. But let's take this piece by piece to make this maybe a bit more digestible. Obviously, this has to be some form of the CNA offices, whether it's a digitized version of it or the actual place. Between the photo we saw before, the place Pomni entered, seeing the logo on the walls, we can infer as much. Interestingly, Kane refers to this place as the Macroverse, which is going to be very important, and that's how we'll refer to it for the remainder of this video. On somewhat of a side note, a little detail I noticed is that Kane conveniently didn't show Jax the photo we know he has of the Macroverse, which has the CNA logo on the wall, most likely to not clue Jax in on what the whole CNA thing is. This is because it's not something Kane made up. I know it. CNA is real. He's just trying to gaslight them. But what's with this Macroverse stuff? Well, we'll actually get that answer later in the very same episode. After Jax is proven right, and the whole adventure was seemingly just a fabrication of Kane, which I don't believe at all, by the way, and while he unknowingly taunts each of the cast members, he makes this offhanded comment.
The good ending, where you realize you'd rather stay with me than go back to that pesky old Macroverse or whatever we decide to call it.
Kane openly says right here that they would have just gone back to the Macroverse. So that's that. The Macroverse is just the real world, and Kane has photos of it. That's it. The theory's over. We've solved what the Macroverse is. I mean, come on. It was that simple. This whole time. You really thought it was going to be more than that? What's going on? But it can't be. The Macroverse can't be the real world. Kane is wrong. Because if you take into consideration the context surrounding what he said,
Macroverse or whatever we decide to call it.
bitch, who the fuck is we? No one else decided that but you. I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me explain why I believe the Macroverse and the real world are not the same place, but instead the Macroverse is its own place, separate from both the circus and the real world. We're gonna enter a bit of speculative territory, so let's start with the facts. The most damning piece of evidence to me is how the Macroverse, circus, and real world are presented to us. Just looking at Kane's photos, we can tell that the Macroverse's art style is separate from the circus, going for a much more realistic vibe. But you can still tell it's computer generated. What's interesting to me is when Jax starts geeking out and flashes of the real world start to appear on the screen, it's photorealistic. This is the actual real world. Our real world. So immediately, when Kane refers to the photos he has as the Macroverse and the real world that the characters want to go back to as the Macroverse, he's just wrong. They're two completely different places. To paint more of a clearer picture, all I'm saying is that there are three known worlds in this universe: the Digital Circus, the real world, and the Macroverse. The Digital Circus is a computer game. The Macroverse is some kind of computer-generated office location, and then there's the real world, which is photorealistic and unlike the other two. To further support and showcase this idea to you all, take a look at the computer Pomni looks at in episode 1 before going crazy, and the computer at the very end of the episode. These are two completely different vibes being shown to us. The one on the left is less detailed and the computer is off, while the one on the right has much more in-depth lighting, as well as wear on the walls. Even if the one on the right is CG animated because they couldn't make a real set, I'd say it looks photorealistic enough to get the vibe that it's meant to be portraying the real world in the same way Jax's memories do. This distinction was very clearly set in stone from the start, and not something Gooseworx came up with in later episodes. We need to remind ourselves that Kane is an AI. All he knows is the information he takes in. So when he discovers this Macroverse, a place outside of his jurisdiction, and his captives speak of going back to a place where he also has no control over, in his mind he must immediately assume they're both the same place, that they must be wanting to return to the only place he knows that he can't bring them to. With that distinction made, let's talk more about what the Macroverse is. And now, let's circle back to episode 1, where we left Pomni, who is just opening that exit door. As she runs through this seemingly endless maze, exit door after exit door, nothing happens until she reaches a particular room. She runs to the other end and stops to look at a specific computer. Based on her reaction, we're led to believe she's seen this computer before, and it's her reaction that most intrigues me. But before we go ahead, let's focus on what's immediately in front of us. What jumped out to most people whenever the episode first aired is the headset off to the side, which must mean this is the headset, or a copy of the headset, that trapped each of the characters in the circus to begin with. But if you remember earlier in the video, I asked you to take note of the condition that the electronics were in. If you'll see now, there's visible grime and wear on the monitor of the computer. It's not just Cheeto dust that you can wipe off the screen of an iPad, that's very clearly accumulated over time. But even if you take a step back from the computer, the whole place looks worse for wear, but strangely only in certain areas. The walls look fine. You would imagine if the computers went from as clean as they were in Kane's photo to being that grotesque, that the whole building would be in worse shape. On the other hand, there's papers strewn across the floor, and even the lighting looks less warm, giving off a more dead vibe to the location. It would definitely help if we could see the other computers up close, but the rest of them are turned on, so the glow is making it kind of hard to tell if they're also worn down, similarly to the main computer we're shown. It leads me to believe that the photos that Kane has of the Macroverse is from earlier in its lifespan. The time frame in which we're viewing this place doesn't necessarily impact my theory, but I figured it was interesting food for thought, that there's a clear distinction between the computer we're shown in episode 6 and the computer shown in episode 1. To get back on track, what follows this moment of Pomni seeing the computer is what helps us better understand this Macroverse. Only after Pomni starts freaking out upon seeing the computer do the doors begin to take her to different places. Or maybe I should say rooms, but you get the idea. The first has the CNA logo on the wall that I talked about earlier, but after that, the next corridor is weird. It's dark and incomprehensible. It starts to narrow and stretch out, and it just looks scary. But once she reaches the door at the other end and opens it, she ends right back up in the circus. Kane gets some kind of notification on his Apple Watch, and then he goes to pick her up. To put everything into perspective, when Pomni first enters the Macroverse, she's aimless, rushing and frantic, running to each door, opening them without a second thought. But it just continues to loop around, more or less. It's not until she sees the computer and headset and starts losing her mind do the doors start to take her to different locations. And more so, do they start to become darker and more twisted, until eventually, she just ends right back up within the bounds of the game. All of this is to say is that I believe the Macroverse, this office building place separate from the real world in the circus, has to do with the mental state of those who wander throughout it. How does this work within the story? Well, here's my own take on this idea. I believe the Macroverse is separate from the game because the Macroverse is the bridge between the real world and the digital circus, something that CNA employees use to test the game. They use it to go in and out from the real world to the game, using their own office building as a reference when making it. It could have also functioned as another place for employees to continue to work, hence why there's computers turned on and papers everywhere. A place where they could avoid Kane whenever necessary as to not get stuck inside the circus. That's why they cut Kane off. As for the photos that Kane has, I believe they were left behind by a CNA employee who just forgot them there, or, to make a better connection, they were potentially something Kinger brought into the game before being trapped for good. To get out of the circus and Macroverse, I imagine the employees must have to think a certain way, or maybe of a certain thing, to get the real exit door to appear. It's out there, but I believe it fits within the realm of possibility in this universe. However, just to reiterate, most of that is completely speculation, and just my take based on the conclusion I've come to. I'm interested in hearing what any of you have to say regarding this theory, or your own takes on it, down in the comments. I'll more than likely read each one. Now that I've gotten everything I wanted to say out of the way, I've only hit a few roadblocks when it comes to this theory. The first of which are the different doors shown in the first image of the Macroverse that Kane is looking at in episode 6. In the photo he holds, there are non-exit doors, but when Pomni is running around throughout the Macroverse in episode 1, every door shown to us is the exit door. Again, this could be based on the mentality thing. Pomni is just looking for an exit, so every door in the Macroverse appears to her as an exit door. But that's not like a 100% foolproof answer. That's just entirely speculation. Not only that, but just the fact that only some of the places warn or show signs of being abandoned while other parts don't doesn't make a lot of sense. If it's a digital world, why would the computer wear down over time? The only idea that I have is that the computer appeared to Pomni as she saw it in the real world, while everything else remained the same. Now, what does this theory mean for the rest of the series and what we've been told? Well, I think it explains a lot. Most importantly, that CNA wasn't something Kane made up for the episode 7 adventure. That what Abel talked about had at least a little bit of truth behind it, if CNA is actually real. And we can assume that CNA is real. I mean, Kane was hiding the photos that have the CNA logos on the wall of the Macroverse from him. There weren't any photos behind those ones, so it doesn't imply that Kane was showing him other photos beforehand. It was only those 3 photos. He also only looked at the photo in episode 6, coincidentally after everyone had left. He's making an effort to keep this information away from them. So he wasn't only talking out of his ass when he grouped the Macroverse and the real world together, he also lied about his incredible world building skills. And sequentially, that moment where he reveals the facade to all the players and says those 2 points I just referred to is coincidentally followed up by Jax telling him he lies about everything. So, I mean, I'm just putting that out there. So let's wind down and look at things from a wider view. The Macroverse is, in my opinion, the key to escaping the Digital Circus game. There's so much more to be explored in this place that we haven't seen yet, and I am really interested in potentially seeing other characters go there and what it'll look like for them. If the mental state of the person inside has an effect on it, what happens if someone like Jax goes in there, or Ragatha? There's just so many possibilities. From what we do know, Pomni's mental state seemingly affected the place, and we know it's real because Kane is actively looking into it. It also has some ties to the CNA Corporation that we've just been kinda led to believe has been real this whole time. We also know that our Ringmaster doesn't want to give our cast the full information as he hid vital clues from Jax. And I imagine that's because Kane knows if they get any more information or get any closer to that place, then they'd be able to escape. But that's just my 2 cents. I really hope you guys enjoyed this theory. I had a lot of fun making it, and I definitely have plans to do more like this in the future, so if you guys want to see more, let me know. I have some ideas for videos talking about character analysis or just even more theories that I've had recently. And with, the time in between the next couple of episodes, there's probably enough time for me to get a couple theories out about this series before it wraps up. So, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.